Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Bump Podcast, a place for the believers of the unexplained, monsters, and paranormal. Join us, and we'll go face to face with what goes bump in the night. Hey there, believers. I got another great episode for you this week. Off to a good start this year. This week, I'm bringing on Leslie and Stephen Shaw. They are co-authors of the book Who They Are and What They're Up To. You can imagine probably by the cover art, if you've looked at it, that we're talking about UFOs. We're talking about aliens. I haven't read the book yet. I meant to order it. You know how it is, but I'm glad I didn't. And I'm glad I haven't heard the Shaws on any other podcast yet, because as you know, I like to hear things for the first time. It makes for a more authentic conversation. I don't have to plan things. It's just good. I feel like I'll probably work better off the cuff anyway. I don't want to sound rehearsed. I want to hear it for the first time as we record and just see what comes naturally. But I have a list of questions that I just in general want to know. I'm gonna ask about these UFOs, because there's, the jury's still out. We've had snippets of disclosure. We've had people that are experts in the field of disclosure, as much as you can be. We've had whistleblowers. We've had all kinds of stuff go on. Yet we're kind of still in the dark as to who or what is flying them, or what we're looking at even is the whole thing some kind of biological entity, or is it a craft, or is it a celestial being? Why are they here? Where do they come from? To say that these are not of Earth, okay, great. Not our technology, okay. So tell us what they are. And that's what I think this book is going to accomplish. Who they are and what they're up to is the name of the book. Let's go ahead and just bring the Shaws on, and let's get it going. Let's see who they are.
You got it.
All right, you got it?
Yes.
We got it.
All right, man. Well, Leslie and Stephen, thank you very much for joining me this week. Let's start by just telling me a little bit about yourself, like where are you from and what got you into UFOs?
We're from Southern California. We live out in the desert east of Los Angeles near Palm Springs in a community called Desert Hot Springs. We're both UFO witnesses, and we believe Stephen's family has been victims of the abduction phenomenon for about 3 generations.
Yes, that's correct. And as far as my background, I grew up in Woodland Hills, California, which is near Encino. And my background was military as a woodworker, doctor of acupuncture, Tai Chi teacher, worn different hats, a musician most of my life.
And I was a journalist for 18 years. So as the writer in the family, I did most of the writing of the book, but we're both collaborators on our theories. And Stephen's been a sounding board for many years, and also the source of the inspiration for the book.
Yes, that's correct.
From his early experiences. But I saw my first one finally. I had to just believe, Steve, I believe you, darling. I believe you. But somehow there was I 95% believed him. And then the day you finally see it, then now it's 100% we believe it. We were together when we saw my first one, which was in an '05. It was just a ball of light in the sky that in front of our car, and it just seemed to get brighter and brighter and just be hovering as we approached it. And then it shot away over the northern horizon and gone in about a quarter of a second, not even a whole second. And it streaked out into a long white line, and then the line collapsed behind it. I would have estimated it going at, I don't know, 10,000 miles an hour, something
Wow.
like that.
roughly.
Yeah. I mean, a white light in the sky can be many things, but when it moves like that, it can't be anything else. Also, they didn't like slowly ramp up to speed and go at that speed. It just instantaneously was at speed.
Wow.
And then her second one was just about 2.5, 3 years ago. That was
Yeah,
here.
it was very similar here in Desert Hot Springs, a white light in the sky, but moving in inexplicable ways. But Stephen's early experiences with the abduction phenomenon, I think, was really the impetus for us writing.
Yes, I first started when I was 3 years old. I would have this friendly being that would visit me. Again, living in Woodland Hills, that would be jumping on my stomach and my chest when I was 3 years old in the middle of the night, and just playfully
But
and
it's invisible.
invisible. No, I couldn't see it, at least visibly. And then various other things happened in between. But when I was about 9 years old, I was sleeping in a bunk bed in the same house, and I was awakened by this odd sound in the house. And I got out of the bunk bed and I was walking down the hallway, which was very dimly lit. And I know I was awake because my heart was pounding and I was very anxious. And just as I was going to turn the corner into the living room, I just black out. And the next thing I know, it's about several hours, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours later, that I'm back in my bunk bed sleeping, and I
And
have no awareness at all as far as what happened in between.
this missing time thing happens again and again in the family. His brother described it, and so does he.
Yes, and then a couple years later, I guess I was 10 or 11, I saw my first UFO. And that UFO was a large orange ball that was just hovering in the sky, then started moving from north to south about 9:30 at night. And it was obviously, it was not a plane. It was not going in a directional plane. It was not behaving like a plane. So I called Griffith Park Observatory the next night, and I talked to one of the astronomers there, and asked if they seen anything.
They
And
hadn't heard
they
anything.
hadn't
Yeah.
heard anything. Said we don't point our telescopes in that direction, so they hadn't heard anything.
And then there was one off Malibu that I thought was
Yes,
fascinating.
the one off of Malibu was interesting because I had a witness with me. I had the Car Valley. I was at the Chart House off of Malibu. This was in November because the Boston Red Sox were playing the New York Yankees in 2005 in the playoff, and I was going out to get my car, and it came out of the ocean, which was interesting. And again, it was white. It hovered there for a while, and we both looked at each other. Then it did some crazy movements and it shot off. He said, "You saw that, right?" And said, "Yes." Interestingly, off of the coast of Malibu, there apparently is a real hot spot as far as for USOs.
And there's supposed to be like an underwater structure on that
Yes.
off of
Which
Malibu
I didn't know
that
about
looks
at the
very
time.
strange.
I
Yeah.
had I had no clue about that. No, the other one that I saw without Leslie was just a couple years later. Many people saw that it was a daytime sighting. It was a silver object that was hovering over Yucca Valley Joshua Tree area that was called into the radio station 1077, and people were calling it in, and I saw it too driving down the pass. So those are the UFOs that I have seen.
And then the strange thing one time happened in the house, at the Fallbrook house in Woodland Hills. He was asleep on the sofa, and then he woke up and he was aware he was awake, but then this white light being came right
I was
from the
18 years old. Yes. To preface that, I was sleeping on the sofa because I had been scared from the night before. The night before, I was sleeping in my bunk bed. I was 18, and my dad and my sister and I were living together. And to make a long story short, I was awakened by this sound that was like a whoosh, whoosh.
like a whizzing
like a whizzing
sound.
sound, and the hallway was partially lit, so I could see down the hallway. My door was open, so I just thought it was just, I don't know. I just, try and dismiss things. So I rolled over onto my left side to go to sleep. And then my bed started being pushed from the base, two distinct pushes, like somebody's just going push, push. And I thought, well, maybe I moved, or maybe it's a small earthquake or something. And then I tried to go back to sleep again. Then it pushed a little harder. And then the third time it pushed harder. And then the fourth time I got three distinct taps on my right shoulder. Tap, 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 just like an index finger. And at this point, I was both scared and a little bit ticked off, quite frankly. Say, what do you want? Just talk to me, whatever. And I rolled over and I said, "What?" And it was not there. And then I black out.
Oh,
I
wow.
Right.
I
Another
didn't I
blackout
didn't
incident.
I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't go and tell my dad, didn't tell my sister. So leading up to what Leslie was saying,
The next morning. And
the following night I decided I'm going to sleep in the living room. I don't want to sleep in that room again. So I slept in the living room, and I woke up this was January 1979, so it was dark. And woke up about 5:30 in the morning or so, and looked at my piano because I'm a pianist and accordionist. I was awake. I was thinking about what I was going to play and whatnot. And I said, no, it's too early to get up. So just laying there on my back, and from behind me, about 30 feet from behind, from the front door, this tall being, blue white, very specifically blue white, not blue or not white, very intense blue white, about 6 to 7 feet tall. It was erect, and it was like it was walking, but it was more like it was floating because it moved so quickly. Within about a second and a half to 2 seconds, came to my right side and bent down to me and paralyzed the right side of my body and said, "Hi, Steve," in a whisper. And I thought, oh, this is the family spirit guide that I heard about since being a child, called O'Glegley, that some people have seen from time to time in times of need or whatever. And I both wanted to see and look at the creature directly, the being, but I was both scared and I was excited because I couldn't move any part of the right side of my body. And after an indeterminate amount of time, it left. It seemed like it was a few seconds, but to this day, at first I thought, well, I must have told my dad, but I can't remember telling my dad
once again, he can't remember
until
right after.
later.
Yeah.
The only thing I can tell you for a fact is that 6 hours later, I was going to go get some lunch, and I reach into the right side of my pocket, the same clothes I was wearing that I went to sleep in, and I pulled out coins, and all the coins, I could pick up the coins with the coins. These are all American coins, the standard American coins.
They'd been
They've been
magnetized.
all been magnetized. This is 6 hours after it happened. My dad and I, both being cabinet makers at the time, we looked at each other and said, "That's not possible." Okay, and I'm still looking for an answer to that.
Yeah,
Eh,
because there's the coins are specifically designed not to be magnetic, so they work
Correct.
inside cigarette machines and or
And
drink
and
machines,
and
right?
and a few nights before that, my sister, dad, and I all experienced the same thing: a silver bell being rung inside the wall by the chimney. We all heard that, and we were first. My dad heard it, then he went to go get me in my room. Then we got my sister, who actually, incidentally, she's a ghost hunter with her husband now
In Scotland, yeah,
in northern
and
England.
Northern
So
England,
she's
yeah.
kind of funny. She didn't want to have anything to do with any of the paranormal stuff at the time. She was a born again Christians, but it was as definitely the sound of a silver bell. And all these things happened within about a week's period of time in 1979.
And his brother also reported incidents. He actually saw a gray alien in his room one time and then blacked out. And another time he said he heard a scrabbling. He was laying in bed. He heard a scrabbling and he reached down thinking he was going to pet a cat, and a hand grabbed his arm.
Wow.
And again, he blacked out. So the incident follows the family. And it's at first I thought it sounded kind of like a haunting, but really it follows the family all over the place, different locations, different houses they've lived in. And we wouldn't know what for sure what was going on, except Philip did see the gray alien finally one time.
He also saw two white lights outside of his bedroom
Yeah.
in Sonora, California. This is the house that my dad and I built. So
But these are more like the reason we wrote the book. It's not
correct.
really about it's not so much about what the book's about. We started researching about 20 years ago the phenomenon. And immediately we noticed that UFO fact and UFO theories were not in alignment. And so whenever you find that to be the case, what you have to do is throw out your theories and start over. And that's what we did. And over the last 20 years, we've cobbled together a theory that does fit the facts as far as we can tell. And it has to do with the the Hiawatha asteroid impact was something that we were pretty sure had happened because we knew that 13,000 years ago there was a mass extinction event. The North America lost all our large animals of the plains. We lost the mastodon and the mammoth and the dire wolf and the saber-toothed cat all at the same time.
And the Clovis people disappeared
And
too.
the Clovis people also disappeared at the same time. And then nanodiamonds were discovered in the soil of 13,000 years old soil. And those are only formed in celestial impacts of some kind. So we knew 13,000 years ago there was a meteor or an asteroid impact on the planet, but nobody could find the crater. And finally, it has been discovered. It was discovered in 2016 under the Hiawatha Glacier in northern Greenland. There's an impact crater of a large asteroid about 1.5
1.5 miles in diameter, about this.
kilos.
Yes,
I
and
mean,
it's about the size of downtown Washington,
kilometers.
D.C.
Yeah. And yeah, right. Washington, D.C. would fit inside the crater. And this would have caused enormous tsunamis, worldwide tsunamis, and it would be incredibly destructive. And finally, that was discovered, and that was integral to our theories. One of our theories is that the aliens and us are actually cousins, much closer cousins than people realize, and that we are a race of people that separated from each other 13,000 years ago. And we believe this is because of the Hiawatha asteroid impact.
And she's talking about the Uccello.
Yes, the Uccello horizon is the layer of soil about 13,000 years old, and they discovered a high concentration of these nanodiamonds in that soil near upper, in the east part of the North American continent, the northeast part.
Oh.
And that's where the highest concentration was. So we surmised for years that, of course, the crater is probably under the ice sheet, and that's exactly what it was. But finally, the ice sheet has melted enough where it was the discovery was
So
possible.
we could dovetail them together as far as like we have the dead body, we just had to find the murderer. So now we've linked them together. So
Right. Wow. Wow. All right. I cannot wait to dig into this. That was I'm gonna have to go back a little bit. I want to get into this book, but you mentioned something Leslie, when you were talking about how it sounded like his childhood experiences or his experiences of his youth and his family were experiencing these things, that it almost sounded like it was paranormal, but it wasn't. Because eventually was it your brother that actually got to see the gray?
Yes.
yes.
And that's how that would be one very distinct way to know that it was otherworldly or it was something other than
Right.
just a paranormal experience, because it does sound like poltergeist activity at first, right? With the bed being
Right.
bumped and all this stuff. But
And it sounds more like a haunting, but hauntings tend to be at one location.
yeah.
This phenomenon has followed me to at least 6 different homes.
Yeah. And his brother all over the place too,
Yeah, so
You
it
mentioned
first happened to them in Woodland Hills, and then they built a house up in Sonora, California, about middle California. And the family was commuting back and forth a lot. And but the phenomenon followed them for sure.
yes, yes. Which that in itself is kind of frightening that something can follow, can find you and follow you around. It shows you that you are subject to it in a way. But
yeah,
I wanted to ask you
tracking
too.
device.
Yeah, Stephen, you talked about something called Oglegly.
O'Glegley was the name I was taught from my mom and my dad, that several different people had seen him. He would manifest as a tall black man, wearing a red fez, supposedly from Tunisia. And it was interesting because my uncle, who married my mom's older sister, who wasn't blood related to us at all, uh, was visited by him when he was in Ceylon, when he was in the Royal Air Force at the time after World War II, which of course is now Sri Lanka. And he was told in the middle of the night, he was told, get out of your bunk, you're going to be killed. And like about 5 minutes later, he got out of his bunk, and there was a some of the natives or some of the I guess the militants, whatever, that didn't want them there. They raided the camp, and several men were killed. So, and my uncle was a very bright man, and he was very into, researching things like Uri Geller, and there was no disbelief at all that there was some type of connection. We didn't know what it was, and I just assumed that it was, a spiritual type thing. But for having when I had my coins magnetized in my pocket, that was some force that I don't think is related to a ghost.
It sounds electromagnetic in
Something.
nature, and that would also account for the paralysis
Yes.
because we're electric beings, right? And if you put enough current through us, we freeze.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point too. That is a good point. And I wanted to ask you too, you'd had these blackout experiences. Do you think that at that time that you were being abducted? Like, were you being taken off site? Did you wake up to any marks on your body or anything?
Well, one thing that's interesting, when I had a severe injury when I was working back on the 29 Palms military base
Mhm.
back in 2013, I was doing support for the Afghani training with the Marines and such like that. And I was unloading a U-Haul at night, and it was a U-Haul that didn't have a proper bumper. It had, there were spaces in between the bumper, and I jumped off onto the loading dock. I understand, Leslie. Okay, and I fell between. I basically broke my right arm, dislocated, broke it, and fractured it, and tore my rotator cuffs. So anyway, they took me to the hospital about 2.5 hours later. I got to the hospital. They x-rayed me, and they found in my deltoid muscle, they found this strange metallic object,
Little
little
elliptical
little
object.
little oblong object that
Yeah.
wasn't even close to where any of the brakes. They didn't even think I even had a brake at the time. I asked the X-ray tech. He says, "Well, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's an old injury, but it's in a weird place." And
And then when they performed surgery on to repair he had actually shattered his scapula in seven places, I believe. And after the surgery, the X-ray showed the thing as being gone. Presumably, the surgeon saw it and threw it away or
we
something.
weren't actually at that time. We weren't thinking about writing a book.
No, and
My head wasn't in that place, but.
also we hadn't seen the X-rays until later when we examined it
I
more
do have a
closely.
copy. I do have a copy of the X-ray though,
Yeah.
and I just need to get it blown up enough to be able to confirm that it was there. So that's
But
that's one thing on my bucket list.
but these tracking devices have been documented in many, 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 many abductees.
Oh
On my
yeah.
right arm, which
Yeah.
is always I always get things happening on my right arm, and just recently I've had stuff happen here at the house just in the last 2 weeks, in the last
Yeah.
month
It's
or
still
so that are
being,
there are odd things that happen.
it
It's
seems like
strange.
what we're finding, and this is true for Stephen, and we think other people, as they become older, they stop taking the adults away, physically taking the adults, and they begin taking the children. And then
Mm.
they'll start taking the grandchildren. It's like they find a DNA strand that they like and they keep taking it again and again. But as we become older, I think maybe our DNA is not as viable or whatever, and they stop taking the adults. But they don't stop communicating with them. I'm finding that to be true all the time. They still influence them, and they still enter their astral state and communicate. And
Yeah, we do think that we're definitely, for whatever reason, in the hypnopompic and hypnagogic state when you're going into sleep and coming out of sleep, that we are more open to communication, and that's seems to be. For instance, I got into bed about 10 days ago, and Leslie hadn't gone to bed yet, so I got into bed, and it felt exactly like somebody had gotten into bed next to me. And I knew it wasn't Leslie, so I said, "Okay, okay, okay, what do you want?" You know,
Again,
it's happened to me so many times that it's just like,
what do you want
yeah,
now?
okay, what do you want now? So anyway, so I ended up going to sleep, and I woke up about 5 o'clock in the morning, like I usually do, and I was laying on my back, and again on my right side, some being or somebody said in a neutral voice, "Husband." Just like somebody just said it right. It wasn't in my head. It was just like somebody whispered to me or my ear, "Husband." No, Leslie's never called me husband. It was just like, okay, what's going on? It's just so. Well, when it's happened to you so many times, like
Yeah.
I've been hundreds of times where I've been going to sleep, getting relaxed, and there'll be like a distinct knock of going 3 times behind my head on the wall.
Mm.
And for most people it would freak them out, but it's like, okay, you know,
Just again,
it's
it's just
again,
happened again.
it's like if you get hit in the face 100 times, 101 doesn't really mean that much. So,
Right.
so for me, it's like I didn't tell many of my friends at all when I was in school because they think I was just weird, you know, but no, it's just one of these things. It was just I didn't talk about it. We knew about it in the family, but we really didn't talk about it except in the family.
Right. Well, thank goodness you have an open family that,
I did, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, his parents one time described the ceiling opening up, and these little they described them as Chinese men descending out of the hole in the ceiling and dancing around on
That
Chinese
was
New
my
Year.
mom. She
Yeah.
she was in one room. My dad was having a totally different experience in his room.
Obviously their memories of the events are being influenced,
Right.
obviously. And we see that a lot, especially in the abductions. They're frequently they they come back with memories that are kind of pasted on top that are not right in any
Right.
way, right?
Screen
Yeah, you
memories. Yeah.
yeah, you
Hmm.
you you probably don't 'cause you haven't read the book, but my brother ended up on his 51st birthday in 2017. He ended up killing both his cats, then taking a shotgun to my mom and
And
blowing
himself.
blowing her head off and then blowing his head off.
Yes, we
He
think
just
he was a very disturbed man I mean, he's a brilliant man, but he spent his whole life in fear. And when he was a child, he would sleep in the closet afraid of the little men. This phenomenon is definitely it leaves scars on the individuals, and
Yeah.
it needs to be explained. And we're so tired of the government just lying and lying and lying and lying and
Yeah,
lying.
that's a big motivation for his reading for his writing the book.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, I totally understand why you would want to expose this darkness, this get to the root of all of it. I'm sorry for the experiences that your families had to go through, man. Uh, and I can't help but wonder, what is it? Is it bloodlines? Is it blood type? Is it, a certain nationality that they're drawn to? They're
Actually, we researched it pretty well. Uh,
good.
it's a bizarre thing, and this is one of the things that didn't fit that where UFO fact and theory were not aligning. Theories were saying that they're just curious about us. They want to take samplings of different people from all different walks of life and different cultures. But that isn't what's happening. What's happening is that it's almost entirely a Caucasian phenomenon.
About 90%.
94.6%, one study we researched. And also, they don't take just a smattering of like a single sampling. Single abductions, single time abductions are rare. What they
Mhm.
mostly do is take the same person again and again and again and again all through their lives. And then, like I say, when that person gets a little bit older, they'll start taking the children and they'll start taking the grandchildren. It's like they find a DNA strand that they like, and they continue to need it and go after it.
Harvesting a product.
It's like they're harvesting a product. In our book, I make the analogy of like a farmer's cow. the farmer every day, every morning, he abducts the cow from the field and takes it into the barn and removes this product that he wants. And then he puts the cow back out into the field to go make more of this product so that he can then abduct the cow again and take it. It seems to me that that they're harvesting a product that they need. We believe it has to do with their bizarre breeding program. And we also believe that, remember, we said earlier that we think they're cousins of ours. We
Yeah.
think that they may be a branch of the Caucasian race that separated 13,000 years ago. And that's why they're after that particular strand of DNA. It's because that's what they need.
Would that be the Clovis people?
No, the Clovis people were early American, very ancient Americans that were hunter and gatherers in the North America.
They were native to North America.
Yeah,
yes.
they were wiped out by the Hiawatha asteroid impact, as well as all the large animals of the
Yeah,
plains.
the Hiawatha, what it did, it's the in the Uccello horizon, those it's like an inch layer thick of carbon, which shows there was a mass
Yeah.
burn that happened on 4 different continents, at least 10 different countries, all at the same time.
Yeah.
So we know there was a conflagration that happened. And also there's at least about 1,200 different separate flood myths that confirm that there was a major catastrophe that happened
Yeah,
at
so
that time.
we
So,
surmise that this is the
yes.
source of the flood myths, the Great Flood of old.
Hmm.
It happened. America. I mean, rather, human history almost never penetrates further than 13,000 years ago. Just seems like a demarcation point of history that just never goes
Right.
back any further. And well, now we know why, because this catastrophe would have been well, a
Yeah.
catastrophe.
Yeah, yes.
Catastrophic, huh?
Imagine 1,000-foot high tsunamis worldwide. Also, when it hit the ice sheet, it vaporized 1,500 gigatons of ice at that instantly. And a gigaton is 1 billion metric tons. So 1,500 of those were vaporized and entered the atmosphere as water vapor, probably covered the top half of the planet in highly saturated rain clouds that immediately dumped enormous amounts of fresh water into the ocean, causing the currents to stop feeding properly, which at the time this hit, we were in the process of coming out of an ice age slowly. But when the asteroid impacted, it threw us right back into the ice age. We just reversed course and went right back in.
For about 1,100 years.
Right. In fact, the Uccello horizon, that charcoal layer, is immediately followed by another layer called the Younger Dryas boundary that was evidence of climate change upheavals that lasted for about 1,000 years after the impact.
Wow. Wow. Very well researched indeed.
Thank you. And we think they're hiding underground. I mean, we have so many testimonials to uh, there's the Admiral Byrd evidence about meeting an underground race, the fact that they're seen coming up out of lakes, out of volcanoes, out of the sides of mountains and mesas, out of the ocean. We believe they're here. They're not coming from distant star systems. We think they're share the planet with us and have been here for thousands of years.
Well, yeah, let's do that. Let's get into that. Let's like I was saying on the pre-intro, I had a few questions. Um, let's go ahead and just jump into the meat of the book if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Like who is flying these things and where are they from and why are they here? I think you've touched on that a bit, but let's flesh some of that out. And maybe what else we could weave into there is why is it so common to see them now?
Well, that's because, according to our theories, again, that was something that never that didn't line up.
Yeah.
They were being seen 10,000 times a year, every year, for years and years and years, all of the, as long as we've been tracking reporting. And supposedly reporting is only at about 10%. So if they're seeing 10,000 times a year, and I mean, only reported 10,000 times a year, they're probably seeing more like 100,000. And the idea that they're coming here from a distant star system that often just stretched credulity to us. It just didn't make sense. And sure enough, when you look deeper into what we found, we don't think they're coming from distant star systems at all.
I boil it down to one word, which I always use as necessity. Um, if you have a need for something to survive, you're going to seek that out. As an example, the proliferation of cow mutilations, they always take the sex organs, they take the eye, they take exsanguinate the blood,
Right.
they take, as an example, if you were to go underground and you would take, herd animals, and you would have to take some food source with you to separate, you're going to separate. You could, if you had the technology to create huge underground cities and you had geothermal down there, you had a certain amount of light, you had all the water you need, and you found out after being knocked back into the Stone Age time after time after time again by meteorites or asteroid impacts. In fact, what we found in our book and one of our chapters, we show just how frequently asteroids and meteorites of large size actually do hit the Earth. And we
Yeah.
also found too that human beings as Homo sapiens sapiens have been around for at least 120,000 years at the bare minimum.
Right.
So that would have given us plenty of time to rise and fall as civilizations many times over.
Right.
We didn't, like, as Leslie says, Leslie will tell you,
it's like the mainstream archaeology would have us believe that we sat around for 107,000 years
Hmm.
with making no advancements at all, still in caves, still hunter gatherers, when suddenly 13,000 years ago we just decided to get some gumption and do something with ourselves. But that's lunacy. The Homo sapiens have been in existence for at least 120,000 years. And my guess is that our civilization has risen and fallen and risen and fallen a few times. It could have risen and fallen 7 times in that time span. And the evidence for what the civilization was like before the Hiawatha impact, almost nothing remains. The only thing that we have are some of these enormous megalithic constructions attributed to people that in no way could have built them.
yeah,
The,
Sacsayhuaman is
yeah,
a good example.
Pumapunku, the Inca who had bronze tools, and these are granite blocks or andesite, which is even harder than most granite.
Yeah, on the most scale 7, which
Yeah,
is it's part of the granite.
you can whack a piece of granite with a bronze tool all day, and you'll just wreck the tool. It
Right.
won't make a dent in it.
And the other thing we found too, which was I think quite interesting, is the fact that in all these flood myths, you'll find one commonality. The commonality is that everybody had a warning: either get to high ground, build an ark, or go underground, build a city like Derinkuyu in southern Turkey on the plateau, the Anatolian plateau. There was forewarning of maybe a few years. So there, people had a knowledge. So whoever was on the planet at the time knew enough that we were going to get hit. Either it was unintentional or it was intentional, but what we do know for a fact is that there was forewarning, there was foreknowledge, and that's very important in that there was an advanced civilization.
Right. So right before Hiawatha strikes, we think we were a fairly advanced civilization. We had astronomy because the ancient Sumerians knew about Pluto. That's 6,000 years ago. They knew about Pluto and Uranus and Neptune, whereas we just discovered those
In the 30s.
in the last century. Right. We finished discovering mapping
Yeah.
out our own solar system. So we know that at some point we had superior knowledge, then we were devastated. And also it's also proven in the bottleneck of the genetic human model. It shows that at some point we were reduced to about 10,000 living individuals, and our entire population has regenerated from that number.
Oh, wow.
Yes, that's something that is irrefutable. Now we have CRISPR
Right.
technology. We're playing around with the human genome and things such as that. So we actually know that we were reduced about that time frame down to a very small amount of people on the planet. And we're actually less genetically diverse because of that.
Yeah, we're not really very genetically
In fact,
diverse. How big?
probably before the cataclysm, probably we had a lot more ability with things like the telepathy and things such as that. We probably it's now a lot of that has been lost, and perhaps the people that went the our cousins that we call them cousins now that went underground, they kept that
Yeah.
and they've enhanced that. That's why they like people that have either more of a proclivity towards psychism, like has been in my family bloodline. That
Yeah,
I
they're a very psychic bunch. They
Yes,
really are. Steve
Yeah.
plucks words out of my head constantly.
even words that don't even exist.
Yeah, really crazy words too.
Yeah. So it's, but I've, I play music. When I play music, it'll just come to me. It just
Yeah.
comes to me. I just hear it, just,
But when we started with this new theory and we started throwing evidence at it, well, how about this? Does it wash with this evidence? Does it wash with this evidence? For instance, the cattle mutilations. Uh, what would aliens want with the eye, tongue, and sex organs of cattle in the millions?
and the blood.
But we have an idea. If they have herds underneath the ground, these herds have maybe become non-viable. So they have to steal surface DNA in order to continue making their herds, keeping their herds viable. We think that may be why they're taking human beings, is that their race, their population has become less viable living underground.
And using women on the surface as incubators for
Yes.
hybrids and such as that. That's been proven time and time again, where a woman was pregnant, and at about the 4 month mark, the fetus is gone, and the doctor will say, "You were pregnant." Now it shows no sign that you were pregnant.
We're
And
finding
it
that
happens
about
over and over.
10%
Yeah.
of the abductees are reporting this phenomenon. Women who are taken, impregnated, and then 4 months later, the fetus, they're taken again, and the fetus is taken. And then years later, they're sometimes taken in once again, and they're introduced to their alien hybrid children. And of course, when we say alien, we don't really think they're completely aliens. We think they've just mutated living underground. I mean, think about what would a human look like if it had been underground for 13,000 years? It might be paler. It might be have big black eyes. It might be bald. It wouldn't need hair any longer to be warm. Uh, we think that the
Adaptation.
grays represent possibly types of humans that have mutated just because they've been living underground for
Or
thousands and
they
thousands of years.
or we were so far genetically advanced way past CRISPR that we needed a race that was, less volatile like we humans are. I mean, we don't like being slaves. But
Yeah.
you take a lot of the anger and the fear out of the equation, then you have a more reliable helper in a sense.
And
Right.
then I found that always funny that the Nordic aliens are indistinguishable from human beings.
Right.
And did you ever hear about the story about the guy who he landed his name was Valiant Thor,
Hmm.
and it's a book about it called Stranger at the Pentagon, I think, or the
Yes.
White House. I can't remember exactly. But anyway, this Valiant Thor guy lands in a spaceship in a Virginia field and asks to be taken to the president, and they take him to the Pentagon, and he stays with the Pentagon and the White House for 3 years, advising them. And he's described as a white, red-haired Caucasian man.
They have one picture supposedly of him, and he looks just like your average, white guy
Like
from the
us.
50s, the clean cut, and it's it's kind of like, where inspiration from the movies like The day the Earth stood. Was that the day the Earth stood still? Or
Are you thinking about a deep impact?
oh no, the one with the one that was made where the guy's got the robot and it says
Oh,
like
yes, yes, that one.
the day the Earth stood still.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You know, this there's so many parallels to this. As you're talking, and um, these. So okay, let me get out of my own head and just clarify here. So the theory is that there's a remnant that survived or evaded the flood, whatever this cataclysm was.
Yes.
Yes.
And they went to like this plateau region beneath Turkey, perhaps, and
Yes.
maybe entered into the cave systems because like the
Also,
caves here in America, they all interconnect for the
we
most
think
part.
they sank other arcs on different continents too, just in order to survive the cataclysm that they knew was coming.
Right.
Did you ever see the movie Deep Impact? Uh,
If I did, it was a long time ago.
yeah, the human race is about to be destroyed by an
Mhm.
asteroid, and um, the the plan A is to blow the thing up before it kills us all, but plan B is to sink these arcs deep underground, deep enough where the residents down there would be safe, and they put their brightest and best scientists and
Right.
they go underground where they're going to be nice and safe. And we think that's maybe exactly what happened. They saw it coming. They sank arcs on different continents. They sank themselves deep underground. And then they had to stay there for 1,000 years because of the horrible climatic uh, uh, cataclysm afterwards, the upheavals of the climate where you couldn't grow crops anymore. That's why I think too why we were putting back into the Stone Age. And they kept their technology. They didn't lose their technology when they went underground, right? Whereas all us poor schmucks on the surface, we got plaster.
We know they had advanced ability of being able to manipulate rock and mold and to melt rock and diffuse rock. And you can see that all over the world. Myself being a CB, I've done a lot of concrete pours throughout my life. And when I look at stuff at Puma Punko, those H blocks, to me, it looks more like a pour. Looks more like they basically set up shop and they basically said, okay, we can melt this stuff and just put it into a mold, and it'd
Mhm.
be a lot
Yeah.
simpler to do it that way than have to do all this fancy cutting, this laser cutting. You just mold it,
And they're
just like a
absolutely
concrete block.
identical, one to the
Yeah,
next to the next.
the strata is exactly the same, just like you would get, like we do now when we make concrete blocks or
Right.
whatnot. It's the same. It's all uniform.
And some of the granite rock at the Giza Plateau shows lathe marks from machine lathes. The machines aren't there. The
Mhm.
diamonds aren't. There's never been a diamond discovered in Egypt, but it looks like they were cut with diamond encrusted lathe
They
type
they had
tools.
technology we don't currently have.
Right. Yeah. Are you guys familiar with Derek Olson? Um, he has a social media uh presence, I guess you call it, a huge YouTube channel, Megalithic
Oh,
Marvels.
okay. Yes, I thought that sounded familiar. Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say I've had him on the show a couple times, and we've talked about some of these things. And you're right; they look like somehow they made concrete with granite, um,
Yes.
it- or
Right. We think
whatever that. What'd you call that one mineral that was even tougher than granite?
andesite.
Andesite.
Mhm.
Andesite. Yep.
That's what
It's just incredible.
Saxuamon is made out of.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's almost like it was a solid wall, and they just carved into it creases to look like blocks. They're so close together, you know what I mean? But it
They
runs
almost
all the
look
way through.
fused, almost
Yeah,
like
yeah,
and they're slightly rounded, almost like
right,
they built the thing and then maybe superheated it to where it's slightly sagged
right.
and they maybe fused together.
Wow.
Saxuaman means head of the falcon, I believe, and the myth, I mean the ancient uh, lore about Saxuamon. It was that it was built by a falcon that could spit an acid onto the rock to melt the rock. And of course, it's what's a falcon? It's a flying
Right.
it's a flying bird. So I get this vision in my head of this flying machine that could spit acid at a rock and melt it.
And
Yeah.
they could obviously they could move it very easily to the rocks,
Right.
the stones, and it's interesting how they basically offset the cuts just like a jigsaw puzzle, because by doing that, especially with earthquakes, with the shearing force and the up and down force, by actually having rocks put together like that and then fuse, it's actually stronger than if you had one solid piece,
Right.
because it deflects the stress better that way. So in other words, withstand the stress of time and
And
the test of time.
Machu Picchu is situated over two earthquake faults, but
Mm.
those walls are still standing.
Yeah. I I can't help but just see all the parallels of this theory. How familiar are you guys with the Nephilim of the Bible?
Oh, very.
Yes, we've read Sitchin's work
Yeah.
And others too.
and others too.
Yeah.
And
'Cause when you look at the
yeah,
Nephilim, they said they were the sons of God, right? These watchers. They descended, they took wives, they bred, and they had these offspring. These offspring are the Nephilim. And it
right.
said they were this was in the days of Noah, and they were on the earth in those days and after. So it's very parallel. There's a very big similarity here between this race of people that were on the earth before the cataclysm and after. And if you look in apocryphal texts and extra biblical texts, they tell you that these watchers, they would exchange technology,
Yes.
to breed with humans.
Yes.
And so they're this advanced culture, this advanced civilization.
That can breed with us. How
Yeah,
can that
absolutely.
be if they're not humans, right? I mean, yeah, maybe genetic modification, but sounds like they were just having sex and making children that way.
And it's
Yeah, but
interesting how the Nephilim would breed with the beautiful the beautiful women of the earth and create giants.
yes,
Okay,
yeah, they were
so
they were giants, the men of renown.
mhm.
And that would even tie in with this valiant Thor guy, this this big large man with long flowing red hair. Uh that I don't know, it's just it's interesting. This is
I think,
interesting.
let's say after the flood and after the waters receded, they're down there, right? And they come up back onto the surface and they go, "Oh God, we've got all these surviving savages on the surface that don't know the least of anything." And we have to most of these if you read these by ancient flood myth stories, a lot of them talk about how uh that the human race had devolved into like cannibalism and barbarism, and a god flies in on a platform holding two lightning rods in his hand and comes and teaches humanity how to do, uh, basically teaches us knowledge and skills and math and architecture and uh, not to eat each other and to how to grow crops and stuff like that. There's almost all of these stories talk about a god showing up after the flood to help humanity back onto
A
their
tall
feet.
a tall white god, either with red hair or with dark hair.
Right.
The Viracocha was the name in South America.
Yeah, and
You
he's
know,
of course he's Caucasian. He has a
Mm.
beard. He doesn't look like the natives of the area at all. And but what he does look like is a Caucasian man with a beard.
with advanced knowledge that knows everything from mathematics
Right.
to
And teaches the
astronomy,
people
teaches the people. It's a
and
god.
so we think at first the easiest way to manage us this is like this watcher thing where they come, they take care of us, they teach us, things and
Ten,
take wives.
Ten Commandment type stuff.
Yeah, they might have trouble. Again, they after thousands of years below, they might be having trouble breeding. They might be non-viable and need to take wives from the surface. So it became like a symbiotic relationship. But they were at first playing God,
Right.
right? They had to play God. But now we're too sophisticated for that. They can't play God anymore. I think now they're playing space alien.
Yeah, and we both think that the rediscovery of the atom and the nuclear weapons really started to worry them because they live here. I mean,
Right.
they have a vested interest, and it's not destroying ourselves because they need us and they need this planet. So
That's the
that's
thing that from Admiral Byrd's diary when he met with the master under the ice sheet to discuss things with him. The master said, "Mostly we leave you guys alone. We don't bother with your wars and your barbarity. But because you've discovered nuclear weapons, we have to intervene now. We have to because you'll destroy yourselves with them."
yeah, they had already been there and done that. Like you could say that, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yep. And guess what he looked like? A man. He looked like a tall Nordic looking man.
Right.
And Bird describes his accent as
Slightly Germanic.
slightly Germanic or Nordic. And he was a white Caucasian old man telling, and he was calling, he referred to Bird as my son several times in this benevolent kind of way. And they even told us why they said, "Don't worry, we'll protect the remnants of your society and your culture from destruction," which is tantamount, in my opinion, to explaining why they're abducting people.
Yeah, this is interesting because you would think if they survived this and everybody on the surface is wiped down to just a handful, really,
Yes.
that they would have just enslaved us. They would have come back to the surface and kept our numbers low. But then you think, well, maybe we are enslaved and they're working with our governments and they're getting what they want. They get all the funding they need. Stay out of sight for the most part, and they can really rule the world, right?
And they get the genetic material they need,
There,
and we get a little dribs and drabs of
yeah.
technology from them.
There's one of my old favorite movies, both Leslie and I like, called Sneakers, where Dan Aykroyd and Robert Redford were in that. And Dan Aykroyd, this is about a 35-year-old movie, and he's one of these guys that believes all the conspiracy theories, right? Again, it's like 35 years ago. And so there's this one scene where Robert Redford walks in the room and Dan Aykroyd's talking, says, and so Ike says, "Hey, you can take all the cowlips you want, just give us your technology." You know, uh,
Ironically, we think there really was a meeting.
ironically, that might be too far from the truth.
I know.
Well,
We think that
Dan
there
Aykroyd's
really
a
was a
believer in
meeting between Eisenhower and, the aliens to make this pact, this evil pact. We'll keep your secret. We won't tell people you're there. And you can have all of if you need to take people for your genetic manipulations and experiments,
And
that's
cows.
fine, since we can't stop you anyway. And as many cowlips as you want, but just give us some of your technology. We
Yeah.
think that that's exactly what they've been doing, and reverse engineering it in the private sector, which doesn't have to respond to FOIA requests, Freedom
Right.
of Information Act requests.
Right.
Yeah.
Bigelow, the guys like that,
Yeah, Bigelow is a
Skinwalker
good
Red.
example.
Yeah. Bigelow's a good example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Something else unsettling with this too is today, off air in a private conversation with somebody I cannot name, uh, they're a border patrol agent. And they were, I guess they just wanted to get it out. They said that it doesn't make any sense the way things are working. He said it's like we're all livestock and we're being kept on
Yes.
separate ranches.
Yep.
You're not allowed in without paperwork. You're not allowed out without paperwork. And he said, and he doesn't understand this, the migration patterns, not just the southern border. He's actually at the northern border. Uh, he doesn't understand how or why certain groups and certain people at certain times are let in and out. He said, but it's like letting livestock in from another ranch and then keeping livestock out, and how he feels like the governments around the world look at us just like livestock. And now I'm talking to you guys the very same day, and it's about, how these aliens, for lack of a better word, are using us like livestock. So there
Yeah,
must be a connection between the government and these aliens, right? Why
yeah,
is the government involved, and what is the connection here?
Well, it was to do with that meeting with Eisenhower. We
Yeah.
want their technology, and we're willing to let them run their breeding programs and uh,
yeah.
their abductions.
A lot of interesting things happened. Like for instance, with Truman, who really, set up Majestic 12, that's as far as we can tell. But
Right.
also, two people forget that in 1948, May 12th, 1948, with David Ben-Gurion, negotiated the current day Israel. David Ben-Gurion through Truman started basically giving Israel a new place in the world.
But where Truman had he was it was during World War II that the aliens, or cousins, as we call them, began to show their hand because of the use of nuclear weapons in World War II.
Yes.
They started following our planes and our ships on maneuvers, and then they started following our bases and anything to do with nuclear bases. They were dogging them. They were and then the Malmstrom incident, where they actually shut
1966.
down 10 of our nuclear warheads at that facility in Montana, just to show us that they can, I think.
They've done that in Great Britain too, and other countries too.
But
Oh
They've
yeah.
we
shown.
think that's the vast majority of their motivation right now, is they are following our military everywhere we go, on every maneuver we go, because they are afraid that we're going to blow up the world and kill them too. And
Mm.
so they are following our military. The Tic Tac incident, when Fravor and Ryan, the two Ryan Graves rather, and the other pilot Fravor, was for the Tic Tac incident. They were the ones at the disclosure hearings and the congressional hearings
Over the
this
summer.
summer.
Yeah.
And the one thing I didn't know, I heard a lot of stuff I knew already, but one thing I hadn't heard was that this is happening every single time our military goes on maneuvers. They are following us every time. And I think it's because they're afraid we're going to blow up the world. They
Wow.
have to monitor what we're doing. That's their big motivation right now. That's one thing they didn't get in the meeting with Eisenhower. We wanted their technology, and they wanted to be able to continue doing their thing. But they also were really trying to get us to denuclearize, and they didn't get that. And so they have no choice but to dog us everywhere we go, at least wherever we're bringing nuclear weapons with us.
All right. Wow. Well, this has been absolutely amazing. Um, I'm gonna have to get my hands on a copy of that book. And
We'll
It's on Amazon if
well
or we can send you one.
let's send you one, yeah, and we'll sign it for you and everything.
Or PDF
well,
too. We have PDF too you can do. So
Yeah, we do have a PDF reader. Do you have a preference?
if you want to send me a signed copy, I will pay you for it. I don't mind if you have any way to accept payment.
No, it'd be our pleasure to
your pleasure.
send it. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
My pleasure. It's
Yeah,
been an
shoot me
honor.
your mailing address, and I'll on that Instagram account where we first hooked
I
up,
sure will.
and I'll mail you one out.
All right. I do have one final question, and then I would like for you guys to tell everybody where they can find you and your book, and about maybe any future works you might have planned. Because as creative as the two of you are, I doubt you're going to do a one and done with the book here. Um, okay. The only question that I have, and it might be in the book, and I don't want to ruin anything. Who gave them? And I believe in God, so if it's God, that's a fine enough answer for me. Who gave them the warning to go underground before that cataclysm?
We believe. Now remember, these beings are able to use telepathy to communicate, and most of the people that were contacted and warned were done so in their mind. They heard a disembodied voice in their mind, giving them instructions to build. If they were at low ground, they had to build an ark. If they were at high ground, they had to go to higher ground. And if they were in the middle of the Anatolian plateau, they were told to dig in.
Was that your exact question, or were you asking about how did they know to give everybody a warning?
Yeah, my question was who gave the warning? You know, the voice they
Right.
heard, is it the voice of God?
It was
Did he give a hey, everybody get down?
We think it was the people who had discovered that they were about to be, I mean, that the Hiawatha asteroid was coming in,
Oh, okay.
and this
our
advanced
cousins.
society of people that are, we don't know who exactly, but we think they saw it coming and
Okay.
decided
Like
to warn the entire world.
okay.
Like we can almost do now. We're monitoring the asteroid belt and things like that.
Gotcha.
They could see it was coming, and I think that they had a little bit of sympathy for us that they didn't want to. Number one, they didn't want the planet to be blown up. It is in our book, some more of our theories that go into more detail.
Yeah.
Um, it's
A lot more detail.
yeah, more detail for sure. But anyways, it was basically us, in a
Yeah.
sense. We
Okay.
warned ourselves.
Right.
So somebody watching the skies,
Yes.
science, the astronomers, and we're like,
Yes.
oh, okay, I see something coming.
Yeah.
We got time to get out of
Get the
here.
word out.
More or less,
And we
yes.
think that we believe they were not just more advanced than us technologically speaking, but also in mental ways. Uh, it's in our book. We talk about if you raise your Kundalini energy and, do chanting and meditation and open your chakras, human beings actually start to begin to be telepathic ourselves. We begin to be clairvoyant ourselves. I kind of believe this is a human birthright, that if you're just trained properly from birth, that we would all have this ability. But perhaps it's atrophied in us over the thousands of years of not using it, and in them it has not atrophied because they kept it up.
Hmm.
I
Maybe they
saw
didn't
I
calcify their pineal gland with
right.
Neat.
I saw it blew my mind. I saw a 1.5-year-old boy, a little white kid that was sitting at a piano that was playing a simplified version of Clair de Lune. It's almost like Debussy came back, remanifested in a child. He's sitting at the piano and he already knows without music, he knows how to play Debussy. It's ridiculous. And you're starting to see more and more children being born with
Abilities like that.
accelerated abilities.
We
They
think
call
they're
them,
actually modifying our population.
yeah, star children. It's true.
Right.
The brains are like wired different. Each generation is being wired a little more sophisticated.
And that could
That's
be
what we're
part of
seeing.
their breeding program. Maybe
the
that's their
hybrid.
motivation, is to bring us up to their level more, and
Make us less violent for one thing.
right, bring us out of our barbarity, as they
Yeah,
termed
we're
it.
very barbaric.
Yeah.
We just do it different ways now.
Yeah, we are a warrior race, aren't we?
So
Yeah, we are.
so people, oh, you're right. We are starting a second book, and we are this one you can get on Amazon and Ingram. It is Who They Are and What They're Up To by Leslie and Stephen Shaw. And we also have a website with several blogs at whotheyarebook.com. And we're on Instagram and Facebook at leslie.shaw.author.
And
And we're posting a lot of we're trying to be post educational stuff on our Instagram page about this phenomenon.
we try to stay as much as possible out of the rabbit holes. We like to try and use science and logic and just common sense. That's what would you do and what would other people do in a certain, if
Right.
like for instance, you knew a cataclysm was going to happen, what would we do?
And one thing I like about our theories is that it doesn't require Einstein-Rosen bridges. It doesn't require wormholes. It doesn't require time travel, and it doesn't require interdimensionality. It's
Right.
just regular science.
Yeah,
Right.
in fact, yeah, even in the Bible, they talk about, even in the book of Enoch and they, in the Mahabharata, they talk about these fire-breathing dragons or these vehicles coming down. That sounds
Spaceships.
spaceships,
But they have fire coming out of them. So
Yeah, yeah.
what does that remind you of? Good old
Rock
plain old
rocketry.
rocketry.
Yes, correct.
Now we know they're using nukes because some people who get too close to UFOs are actually getting electromagnetic radiation or what were they called?
Yeah,
Radiation burns.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they've
Essentially.
advanced too. You can tell with the they've advanced too. They probably have they're definitely further advanced than we are as far as that's why they can, move from 0 to 10,000 in a split second. So they no, they so
Yeah, they've got
they
stuff we
have
don't have for
advanced,
sure.
so
Yeah.
but they're here and they've got a reason why they're here. It's not just for a research and development project. It's necessity.
Right. Yeah, I agree. They're definitely here. I had my UFO experience with a witness with my dad in
Oh, great.
2009. It's my
Easy.
big one. I've seen a couple of lights before, but I had a big experience in 2009.
Cool.
I'd
Maybe
like to
after
hear all about it.
yeah, I'll have to bring you back on the show and tell you all
Yes,
about
another time.
Another time.
it. Yeah, absolutely. If you guys will come back on, I'll tell you all about it because it I've still never seen some of the colors I saw that day. Um, it's wild.
So yeah, we'll get you a book.
Absolutely.
Give
I
me an
appreciate
address and
it.
I'll get you a book, I promise.
All right. It's I can say it on the air. It's if you want to write it down, I got it for you here
Right.
because I give this address pretty much every week on the show for people that want to send stuff in because I do a lot of book reviews, it seems
I'm
like.
ready. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's P.O. Box 1453, Chapmanville, West Virginia. It's CHAP as in Peter, MANVILLE, West Virginia, and the zip is 25508.
25508.
Got it.
You guys
West
are amazing.
Virginia. West Virginia. Got it. All set.
Yeah,
Promise we'll sign it too. I promise.
I appreciate that. I do.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hey,
Yes.
thanks again for coming on. You guys have been wonderful. I will put a link to your website and I will try to put a link to the book on Amazon in the show notes so people could just click the hyperlink and go straight to it. Okay.
Super. And send us that link if you would, and I'll post it on our social media as well.
Will do. All right.
Thanks.
You guys have a great evening. Keep
Bye
safe
now.
out there. Okay.
You
Thank you.
too.
All
Thank you.
right. God bless.
God
God
bless.
bless you.